Hello and welcome to another edition of Talking Basketball Podcast. I am Mark.
I am Paul. Hello.
Hello, hello. Paul was just about to take a swig of his drink and I stopped him in mid-flow.
Hey, Mark, we have got
a big guest.
We have got a huge guest today.
Huge guest.
It does not get bigger than this.
It does
I
not.
don't think.
Some would say British Basketball League royalty.
Yeah, potentially. And our Newcastle followers are going to want to listen to this one. Let me go straight into it. Yeah, now stand and cheer for your BBL Newcastle owner, Paul Blade. That had to be a good one for Paul.
Had to be. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Well, there's an introduction.
Does that not happen every time you go in the stadium? Does
It's
that not happen?
got to.
No, it doesn't.
Listen, we'll cut the recording. We'll send you one. You can use that on the doors when you go in.
We'll just play it.
Put it on a key fob every time you go in.
Well, look, for all our listeners, if I'm sure you do know, but we have got Newcastle Eagles BBL owner Paul Blake with us today. And look, let's just say it straight. Newcastle Eagles are without a doubt the most prestigious club in the UK. They've
Absolutely.
won more awards than anyone else. Some huge, what is it? They're the only club ever to do the treble three times.
Treble 3 times.
The quadruple.
Quadruple.
The quadruple 3 times. I thought it was the treble.
The clean sweep 3 times. Yeah.
Oh, it's the clean sweep 3 times, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that and all of that has been under your tenure, sir.
Yeah. Remember it all well.
That's all of it, or just some bits a bit flaky?
Yeah, getting more flaky as the years go by, that's for sure. There's my memory's terrible at the best of times, and you try to remember the key games as best you can, but we've got a good log videotape of as many games as we could possibly have in the archive at work. I always thought that was very important. Press cuttings and things like that as well,
When you have such a prestigious effect of winning in not just one category but multiple categories across the UK and now stepping in with Europe as well, does the pressure escalate every time you win?
Yeah, it does. So I'd have thought by how many years in am I now? 20, I think it's 27 years in. You'd get over the winning and losing and not worry about it so much. But if you talk to my wife, we can't watch an away game at home together because I'm shouting at the telly and stressing her out and everybody else in the room.
Really?
I hate losing with a passion, and I've kind of always said it'll probably be the only reason that I need to step away from this, because it's not getting better, it's getting worse. I can't explain that. I'm trying to do things to manage that. People tell me I'm quite a laid back, rational type of character. I wasn't as a player. My friends will tell you as a player I was exactly the opposite, and I carry that a little bit when I'm watching. So
is it the wins are sweeter and you want more, or is it that the losses are harder to take?
What it's become is wins are a relief and losses mean a bad day the next day at the very least. And that's the difficult bit, the not wanting to lose days and not being able to find a way around being down about it. But at the same time, that's why we do what we do, because if I was apathetic about winning and losing, then where's the drive?
It wouldn't be as special.
No, it wouldn't be as special, but you have to be driven in a certain way to work in this business, because it's full on, it's roller coaster ride constantly. So you're doing the best way I've ever been able to explain it is you're doing your normal job, and then you've got this thing that happens at the weekend and sometimes in the week that's going to affect your mood one way or another, and going to tire you mentally, whether you're playing or just around it. It's like being a fan times 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So
No, it makes 100%. And also you've got classic examples like your Chicago Bulls, Jerry Klaus. You know, he left because again he just went, look, you know, it's affecting me.
It's all consuming.
My health, and you know that's why he left from Chicago in the end. So yeah, no, it makes perfect sense, that weight of, you know, all that pressure.
I mean, it's a long tenure that you've been there, to be fair. Are you the longest tenured head of an organisation?
No. So obviously been around about the same amount of time. Actually, not quite as long as Yuri and Sarah at Sheffield.
Ah, okay. I was thinking that it was really close. I couldn't quite tie it in.
But then the kingpin in that correlation is Kevin Routledge. So Kevin's been around for a little bit longer than that. I won't quote the years. Obviously, Vince McCauley was around for a very long time, and I'm going to miss somebody out here. But there's a few of us that have seen a lot happen over a lot of years, you know. And I think to take the positive from all of that as well is I do. You also have this fear of what's life going to be like when I do step away from this, or when, you know, because my wife's very heavily involved as well, and when we both step away from it, will there be this, you know, huge hole that you know has just been filled all these years. So,
do you think you'd be able to watch a game?
Funny, I've been thinking that the last few days, bizarrely enough. Never really thought about it before. I don't know. I think I would. I think absolutely I would. I'd be very very conscious of how the club fared on and off the court after stepping away from it, you know. And I think you know, if you talk to Kevin, Kevin's very, very straight. He won't. This is him, you know. I've never really said for me that this is all of me, if that makes sense. You know, I've got another life, and I don't want to be working until it's time to go, you know. So it's not all consuming in that way for me, but in every other way it is.
You know, I think on behalf of every basketball fan out there, I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't ask you this question as an owner. When you actually became the owner of Newcastle, did you ever consider in the back of your mind going, I'm going to sub myself in at some point? Because that, everyone in the world just thinks that'd be amazing. I'd be the owner. I'll wait till we're up by 30, then I'll sub myself in.
Well, your tenure's longer than Mark Cuban, and they actually made that rule in the NBA to stop him doing that exact thing, didn't they? So,
I would never ever have had an interest in doing that. I mean, we've got that funny line's been thrown many times over the years, you know, because Fab ran with a short bench for a long time for financial reasons, and there'd be games where we literally would only have 5 players. In fact, we only had 5 players against Liège, 3-4 weeks ago, and brought two guys up from the NBL1 team, Theo and Justin. And so who's been at the back end of our bench all year, started that game. So there are always times, but no, it's a real business for me. It's not a folly. I wouldn't ever, even if I had to, or I had to find somebody else, one of my mates to do that, who I played with. This is professional, you know. It's got to be done the right way.
Someone must have done it. Someone in the world must have done it. Well, I tell you what, Paul. I think that's a great place to start. Take us on your journey. Yeah. So you started out as a player, and I think a fellow Northumbrian University you went to, yeah.
Yeah, as was Newcastle Poly. So I moved up to Newcastle in '89. graduated 92, hung around, worked for a year, and then went back and did a master's degree. And all that time I was still playing. And as I was explaining, I played National League too. So actually, the key reason for staying in Newcastle the year I graduated undergrad was because that National League team had started up, which was a team called Sedgefield Racers. Me, a couple of ex-Gateshead lads, coach Ivan Whitfield, who was ex-Gateshead, some of the lads from the university teams, Newcastle and Northumbria, all came together in that team, because there was only Sunderland as a National League team in the whole region at that point. Sorry, I don't know what that was, but so we went on that journey for 3 seasons. I had success. It was the same season that Sheffield Sharks, as was Sheffield Forgers, started out, and we both were promoted 1 and 2 seasons in a row. 3rd season we were in Division 1 and we folded after Game 3. Unfortunately, the club just ran out of money, and that was kind of, in 90% the end of my National League journey. Essentially, I did have a little bit of a swan song, but that was it as a player. And if I'm honest with myself, I played to enjoy rather than really work hard and try and find the way to the next level.
Yeah, I love the fact that you Newcastle and Sheffield were going up together. That's brilliant, that is. Yeah. And then obviously Sheffield now in the BBL,
so I would caveat that it was some Newcastle Gateshead lads playing for a team out of Sedgefield, which is about 40 miles south of Newcastle. Okay. Yeah, because that was the only place that had bizarrely, it was the only place that had a venue with seats. Newton Aycliffe, 40 miles away.
Well, yeah. That is definitely a topic we're going to come on, because I know you've got a passion about that.
Venues are a top. Yeah.
It's I got to ask. It's a familiar subject throughout the entire UK, where you have clubs that are progressing, they're starting up, they get to a certain point, bam, funding gone, that's it, end of the club. I mean, off air we spoke about Portsmouth FC Basketball Club. Same thing happened there. John Deacon, wasn't it, Mark? John Deacon, funding cut, bam, gone. And yeah, like you just said, the team that you're actually playing for, 3 games in, 4 games in, funding cut. I mean, it's a story we hear far too often, maybe.
Yeah, and that resonated with me at the time as a player, because when you're playing, you don't take necessarily any interest in how a club is operating and paying its bills, and who's paying for the minibus that's just driven you down the A1 again this weekend to go and play Sussex Bears, or blimey, I'm struggling to even think of some of the teams we used to play back then. But yeah, so you don't think about those things. I, because of what had happened, did start to a little bit at that point, but it was a few years later that I obviously got involved with the Newcastle franchise. But it's always kind of been a bit front and centre for me that if every club that's folded was still around now and had found a way to be sustainable, we probably have 92 clubs.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we have now anyway. Maybe we have through the divisions anyway. But you know what I'm saying? It's the one missing piece in the way our sport is delivered in this country. And I've said it on many talks before. Basketball lacks club infrastructure in this country. It's okay, but it's not the level of rugby union. It's not the level of cricket, and it's certainly not the level of football in terms of. As a young person, if you want to, play local league basketball at any age, where do you go? Is there a local club that you can join and then have an opportunity to play like you do in football, from under 6 upwards or even younger?
So is it a problem of access? Would you say it's a problem of access, Paul? to access the facilities or accessing clubs? Or
I don't. Right. So here's the thing: it's financial at the end of the day, and it's also willpower, because ultimately, number one, you can't argue that there are not enough basketball courts. There are enough basketball courts because every secondary school has a basketball court, and most of those schools you can hire after school hours. You're fighting competition of other sports, of course, in trying to get the space, and then you're fighting the cost of that facility. But ultimately, football has the same fight. Pretty much all football clubs at participation level are run by volunteers, and they find a way to build subscriptions, find sponsorship, and put teams on pitches that are extremely expensive. We've done the same, albeit that we've had a staff base to be able to make it work. So we've knocked down a lot of obstacles that, if you're just a volunteer trying to do this in your evening hours like we are now, it's particularly hard. But we've managed to build 13 junior clubs as part of our foundation strategy, and there are 2,500 kids playing in those 13 clubs. And we found the facilities, we hire the hours, we charge a subscription to pay back for the coach and the facility, and we do that 13 times over, and thousands of kids are playing as a result at participation level. So it's difficult. There's no two ways about it. There are easier ways to spend your evenings if you're trying to do this as a volunteer trying to grow the sport. There are massive challenges, not a lot of help out there, certainly less help in the last 14 years than there was preceding that, and I'll let you work out what I mean by 14 years. But there is a way, and it is, and we all know on this talk that it is definitely growing, and it's definitely culturally way more acceptable a sport than it was when I started out.
Yeah, and I think what I love about the Newcastle setup is just something really small but hugely effective. Is that Newcastle logo that goes everywhere, all the way through the kid. You see the kids, and they're so proud. I was in Derby recently. Someone wearing Newcastle Eagles shorts has played on one of the teams, and they kept the shorts, and it was like, that means a lot to have that badge, to have that same kit as what the professionals are playing. And I think that's great. Kids love it.
Yeah.
And that's echoed in the foundation as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole, what have we tried to build? Have we done everything right? I think we've finally done things right, and we've made a load of mistakes along the way to get to the right solution in terms of what we were trying to do. But when I took the club over, so just back on that timeline, I'd obviously played, studied. I ended up in a job at Newcastle United Sporting Club. Sir John Hall, who was the owner of Newcastle United at the time, had bought a rugby team, a basketball team, and an ice hockey team, and he'd set that up as the three support teams as part of Newcastle United Sporting Club. I was the marketing manager, and 3 years into that project, the football club pulled out, and Sir John basically cleared the debts of the three clubs and gave me and my boss at the time, who was Ken Nottage, the job of selling the three clubs. So we took the club over, bought it for £1 because it had lost, back to the unsustainable nature of basketball clubs. Newcastle Eagles 96 to 99 had lost 1.7 million. Now, Sir John, the good-hearted individual that he is, didn't want the club to fold, paid that debt.
That's huge.
That's huge. We did that for the rugby as well. He did it for the Falcons and for the Cobras ice hockey too.
Wow.
Cleared all three debts and said, look, we can't continue, but we know that no one's going to take this on if they're having to encumber the debt, the previous debt, so we'll clear it. And Ken and Paul, can you find a way to find buyers? So Ken and I looked at looked at the three, and we just didn't have the pockets. Didn't necessarily have the passion for the ice hockey, because that wasn't either of our backgrounds. Well, that's a great sport, fantastic sport. Didn't have the pockets for the rugby, and we were both basketball players. So, we did an MBO, bought the basketball club for £1, and back to the point. From that day on, I'm a majority shareholder, and Ken moved down to Gloucester and was chief executive of Gloucester Rugby Club for 12, 13 years. But from that first day, we'd set a plan out that basically said, look, if we don't try and invest in properly growing what I understand to be a pathway for a young kid playing football as I did as a kid, or cricket as I did in the summer as a kid, and put that in place for basketball, and build a market of people in the Northeast and people in Newcastle particularly that understand the sport, play the sport, and might want to come and watch it. If we don't invest in doing that, this isn't going anywhere. And that was in '99, so a long time ago now. So we did everything we could in those first 2, 3, 4, 5 years to invest in trying to set a community pathway up, a community network, to get more and more people playing the sport, young people playing the sport, and to encourage them to come and watch games. And that's just been the mentality from day one. Never veered from it. Just we're very clear in that vision. I've had to go all around the houses to try and build it to what it is now, but we never thought that was the wrong thing to do. And the rest is kind of history.
And that's great, because like over that 25-year period, I'd imagine someone there that you have inspired in that time is going to be the next BBL Newcastle Eagle player, maybe the next Newcastle Eagle owner. And it's just passing that torch and setting up that infrastructure so that just keeps continuing. And
the next Tosan Owen.
It seems to be the common theme though with basketball that it's very circular, and people come as players, maybe go coach, and go into the management, front office, back office, then leading organisations. But it always, in our recent interviews with a couple of people, they've said pretty much the same things, that they leave at one end and then they come at the other, and then they go full circle back, and then they'll have grandkids who they're training and go back into the organisations and say, oh yeah, I've got a taste for it again. And after stepping away for a while, it's always this passing of the torch.
Yeah,
always the same.
And again, it was only really, we were talking with Colin Irish yesterday, and it was when we said you actually inspired a generation of people to play basketball. And then when we thought about it, it was like, well, hang on, if he and Alan Cunningham and Steve Nelson, Mike Spey, Jason Colgan, Carl Tatum, all those players weren't there, you probably wouldn't have the National League Portsmouth Force that has just started up.
No.
We probably wouldn't be doing this podcast. And it's just that, that way people do these, I don't want to say small things, but they do these things that just inspire generations. And that is what you've done.
Yeah, well, that's the basketball community, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ultimately. And that's how all sports grow and prosper at the end of the day. Colin Irish was one of my heroes as a young lad, Alan Cunningham, Steve Bontrager.
Steve Bontrager, that name keeps coming up. Kingston legend.
Yeah.
Alton, of course, Alton Bird, in touch with Alton still now. Buck and all those guys, there was a guy called Ernest Lee at Derby who was the best player I'd ever seen growing up as a young lad. You have to look him up. And then obviously into the 90s, as I'm finishing up playing and becoming more involved, the John Whites of this world, Tony Dorsey's, and they're, on the men's side of the game, they're all the people that switch you on to it and give you the buzz and make you want to be involved, right?
So at that point of the you've taken it on, and you've just then realised, okay,
He's made the decision. I'm not going to sub in.
Yeah, I'm not subbing in. We've taken this on. Now what do we do? You've got your goal in mind, which obviously you've stuck to, and it's very clear from seeing the trajectory of the club that you've stuck to that goal and that messaging of getting a foundation in the youth and outreach. But when you're looking at that stage, what is it? Trial and error? Is it how do we do this? And because, as you said, you didn't want to make the same mistakes that had occurred previously, or
starting out with a level of naivety. Because I was, I joined the sporting club at 26, and I'd taken the club over by 28, just coming up to 29. So, and I was like marketing background. I did, sports studies degree and marketing master's degree, and I'd done a bit of marketing work in that period leading up to, which is why I got the marketing manager's role. And that doesn't gear that particular discipline doesn't gear you up to be a financially proficient general manager owner of a club. It just makes you keen to spend money on bright sparkly things in the hope that they bring an audience in, so I it's fair to say I made a few mistakes in those early days, too focused in certain areas. But fortunately, I managed to pull some good staff around me from early doors. My wife got involved 2 years in because she wasn't enjoying her job at the time, and we've worked together ever since. It's 2001 to current day.
Wow.
Which is that's a miracle in itself.
Listen, there's someone out there going, this man should write a book. He spent 24
I was
years
thinking
working
the
with his
same
wife.
thing.
You've got someone out there, and she can write a book as well. You can do chapters.
He would say the same thing. Yeah, I spent 24 years working with my husband.
Absolutely.
And actually, that's probably way worse.
But at the same time,
the other way.
Given what this is, and as we've said, it's a circus. It's you during the day you're doing a job, and then the basketball plays occasionally. So it's a different type of time commitment, and having both partners in that, they understand. Which it would be very difficult to communicate if someone wasn't, and they just, I won't say did a 9 to 5, but just worked in a more structured way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and we make a good team because we have different. My weaknesses are her strengths. And she doesn't have any weaknesses, so
is the correct answer.
Paul's like, she might listen to this.
Anyway.
We could say to the listeners there was a bit of paper that was handed to you as you just said that. But,
right. But it's just, in all seriousness, it's just worked. And Sam's from a sporting background as well. She was a very, very high level swimmer, and so gets it, And actually, you think about the hard work that playing staff of a basketball team have to put in, and then you look at what a swimmer does. She's sort of gold standard, and has always been able to hold that as well, to say, you guys think you're having a hard time, well, this is what I did, and I didn't get paid, and I went to the Olympics.
Wow.
So she would not like me telling you that, but she's very
not everyone has an Olympian in the family.
No. Exactly.
No, exactly. So she's, she really gets it, and that helps. And we've had to, over the years, because I am absolutely relentlessly driven with this. We've had to try to put ground rules in place for when we get home. We don't talk too much about work. That's failed. That's come and gone over the years, and you have to reset. But it's hard to explain, really. It's a long time.
Wow, congratulations. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that just highlights the strength of, a successful marriage, isn't it? You're working together all that time.
Communicating.
Yeah.
100%.
And again, I thought the exact same thing just before you started. I thought, Paul could write a book here. This would be great.
Yeah, it would absolutely be.
I got to ask the question, again, talking about people you've worked with, God bless him, Ken Nottage. again, huge part of getting Newcastle Eagles where they are today.
Yeah, it's still quite raw, to be honest. So we were very close, and I owe everything to Ken, really, in terms of my journey in this. And you have this in life, don't you? There are a small handful of people that kind of define your own destiny in life. You have those sliding door moments where it takes you off in a certain journey, and that was Ken was one of the biggest influences on my life. No two ways about it. It was Ken that gave me the job at the sporting club. I'd previously been playing a little bit with Ken at the Comets that pre-season. We knew each other anyway, but not as well as we got to know each other. And it's just absolute, as everyone will tell you that knew him, just an absolute gentleman, very funny guy, very inspiring. Obviously, he was a great player. Got all that history, Crystal Palace, all the way through. He went back to Embassy All Stars, Sunderland. Just a fantastic guy, and just a horrible situation, unfortunately. Back in the last year, he'd been. I'm sure his family won't mind me saying this, but he'd been quite ill over COVID. He'd actually had a type of cancer, and he had treatment for that, and completely got over the cancer, but his immune system was low. So unfortunately, he took ill, and just couldn't push through it. So yeah, a massive loss. But I just, I have to look back and think of all the good times that we had, and great conversations over the years, and what we achieved.
If someone came to the stadium and you could say to them that, if you see that or you experience this bit, that's what Ken brought to it, how would you capture that?
That's a very good question. Well, you could just start with over a 3-month period of time, while we were sort of dwelling over, do we take the club on or not? That was summer of '99. We were just sat in the sporting club offices all of that summer, trying to work out how this thing plays out. And Ken's words of wisdom all the way through that summer, and that's what I would say above anything else. He always had wise words, and he knew how to put that across to enthuse you and inspire you and pump you up to think, yes, I can do that. That's what he was about, and he would do it himself. So it was always step by step. He was watching over both Sam and I. We would have, sometimes weekly calls, sometimes monthly, and then over the years it might be every 3-4 months, and then it would get more intense again. We would just have a lot of time where obviously we were at the wheel, and Ken was sat in the background, or as a mentor, really. In everything, even up to the build. Do we do the build? Are you sure you want to do it that way, Paul? Maybe we should look at setting it up this way. We would go and meet at a local hotel in Newcastle. He would come up, and we would go through all the different strategies and ways of looking at things. And really sadly, most recently, because he was just coming into retirement, he was starting to really take an interest in the team and the makeup of the team again. And he would watch every game. We'd have a chat about it after the weekend. He really liked this year's team. Questioned a couple of pieces, and I said, no, I think it's going to work. Let's just see how we go. You know, just extremely sad. So I think above anything else, he was always that wise head, elder statesman, 100% mental, and we listened. You know, got to listen. If there's one thing I've learned in my life, you've got to listen to people wiser than yourself.
I mean, that's what a lovely words to, you know, describe someone who obviously clearly meant a lot to you and mentored you.
Yeah.
Did you answer? I'm just curious now. You said you and Ken obviously were tasked with selling these clubs. Which of you two decided, hang on, we could buy this?
It's Ken's idea, 100%.
Was it?
yeah. It's same scenario. So absolutely Ken's idea.
Just the way that you were describing him, I was thinking, I've got a feeling he's set you up here going, I can have this idea and Paul's going to run that. Yeah.
But the way Ken was, really smart. And I think actually I would do this the same way. He knew realistically it wasn't going to be a business that would subsidise both salaries, particularly in the early days. He was getting headhunted into various roles because he had a high profile in the role that he was in. And he'd had an opportunity at Newcastle just to flip over to the football club, you know, which he chose not to do. So, and again, I'm sure nobody would think I'll be talking out of turn here because I think I've said this many times before. He knew. It wasn't that he was trying to find a way to negotiate me round to wanting to do it, because I probably did want to do it. I needed talking into it by a couple of friends, but he basically said to me, look, you should be majority shareholder. He didn't say it should be 50-50 or I'll, you know, I'm the only person that can really leave this club away, which is true, he was. So I'll take the majority of the shares. He said, you know, you're going to be in this day in, day out. You need to be motivated to do it. You need to take the majority of the shares. Now, I didn't have a part in that negotiation at all. But that's what he did. And that's kind of a mark of the man. Others would have done that differently.
Yeah.
He's helping you succeed.
Yeah. Motivated, you know, it's smart. It's just what's the motivation? I didn't know what that even meant really at the time. It was probably just felt like a nice thing, you know. I mean, I understand better now, but yeah, and that was a key consideration, because we were all we all had redundancy packages on the table.
Oh wow, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, of course you would.
Yeah. So I could have just taken the redundancy package and moved on to another job, or maybe moved to the football club or wherever. You know, there could have been a number of things that sprouted up. That's the sliding doors moment again, isn't it?
Yeah.
And actually, even more interesting than that, the day before I took the club over, I had an interview at Leeds United.
Really?
And they were still in Champions League at the time. So that's how long ago it was. So I drove down to that. I've been headhunted. It's the only time in my life, apart from Ken headhunting me for the role at the football club. It was the second time it happened. Been headhunted to go and do an interview. I might not have got the job, but I went into the interview and I just decided on the way down, I'm going to take the club. I'll take the club over. I'm going to take the basketball club over. I'm not. You know, I don't want this job. So I went into the interview and said, look, I'm really sorry. I've made this decision on the way down. And we had a chat for an hour and I came back up again. So another sliding doors moment. You know, we all have those, don't we, in life?
Yeah.
And there you go, 25 years later this August.
Wow.
Wow, that's really cool. I
you
could go Newcastle,
gotta do a
Leeds.
celebration
No, I'm
for
going to own a basketball club.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just like right. Ultimately, that's just right place, right time.
Yeah.
And But it could have been wrong place, wrong time, because we could have run the club for a season and it folded, and time moves on. Life moves on, and it could have done. It could have toppled over quite easily a few times in those first 2 or 3 years because of my lack of financial acumen, should we say?
Wow.
Which is a bit better now than it was.
Well, that's good to hear.
I like a spreadsheet.
Well, those early years though, it's I won't say it's learn as you're sort of going, so to speak, but it was
You learn by failing.
It is. It's fail fast and learn, and what can you do next, and then you start picking up other key players, I guess, in the story, like Fabulous.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
That's just a great name.
Absolute legend, wasn't he?
Yeah,
I mean, that's got to be the turning point, right? That's got to be a huge turning point for Newcastle.
Yeah, and there's a few things really. There's no disrespect to, Craig Lynch was my first coach, and Craig had been coach of the Eagles during the Sporting Club period. And then Tony Garboletto came in for a couple of seasons. And Tony could have been with us, for the long run, but he was headhunted by Birmingham Bullets at the time. Craig Bound wanted him at Birmingham, and we had a long talk. And I said, look, the financial deal for him to go there at the time was a really good one. They were talking about playing in Europe, NEBL. Which I suppose is the same as what we're playing in now, actually.
Yeah, it's the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah. So Tony took that hard decision, and we still talk about that today. And Fab was playing for us at the time. Finances were very tight, so we took this decision that we were going to need to hire a player coach, which is not, the done thing in basketball. And I don't think even now, Fab and I would both agree it's not the done thing, and it shouldn't be the done thing. We had to do it at the time. I wasn't thinking it was going to be a long-term thing, but Fab wanted to play. He got the coaching job, so he managed that situation for a super long time. And ultimately, he was the perfect guy to have in a player coach role, because the most unselfish of players you're ever going to meet, defensive minded, can play 1 to 5, both ends of the floor, and just masses of energy. I thought I had a fair bit of energy at the time, but this guy, it's just a whirling dervish. So, and he still is today. Running up and down with NBA guys. He's just turned 50.
Where was he? Because he went with
Nick Nurse.
Nick Nurse in Toronto, wasn't it?
Went to Toronto, then they've just gone to Philly now, haven't they?
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. So he's in season
2 Philly.
5
over there. Wow.
5. Yeah.
Can I just say something a bit, and I genuinely believe this, where Ken pushed you and where you ended up being a hugely successful owner from where we're sitting, what you've done for coaching staff who are now in the NBA.
Oh, I'm so personally proud of what Fab's achieved, what Nick's achieved, what Chris has achieved, because I was pretty close to all of these guys for quite a long period of time several years ago. We went through lots of different stuff. Nick was on the board for a while he was Brighton Bears owner, and probably more than one occasion, and that's a guy. Nick's a guy with unbelievable energy. Chris is a guy with unbelievable energy, super organized, all three of them completely obsessed with basketball, to a level I cannot understand.
That's why they're in the NBA.
That's why they're there.
Yeah, no question. And all three of them have different attributes. And obviously, you know, Tim Lewis has been out. Is still out. He's been working with Chris at Minnesota. You got guys like Phil Handy that played at Manchester Giants for Nick. You know, there's no surprise. Fab is where Fab's at. Nick wanted Fab for good reason. Nick recruited Fab to Birmingham in '94.
That was the original step.
Yeah. The same applies with Finchy. You know, they've just done an unbelievable job, and I'm really, really proud of all three of them. Nate Reinking as well. Nate's at Cleveland. It's just great. It's just great to see that story. It's a great story, isn't it? I mean,
It's the
talk
same.
about writing books. Those guys can certainly write books.
But you've also got one of your own, Tosan.
Yeah.
Memphis.
Which again,
Detroit. I think pre-season, and then Memphis, and then now in Detroit again.
Yeah, I think he's just sat in he's in a 10-day contract with Detroit as we speak. Obviously, had the All-Star game this weekend, summer games, and well, again, just what a stand-up character.
Came from the academy.
Yeah, came from the academy. Extremely intelligent. Fantastic physique. Extremely coachable, very, very likable young man, and just super proud of him. Whatever he does, to be honest, super proud of him. But I think he's the type of, because he's a sponge, he will just get better and better. He's an intelligent basketball player.
As someone in your position, do you see these guys coming as, like, when you see them as a youngster, do you look at them and think, yeah, he could go there, he could go all the way? Is that possible? Is it something that evolves?
It's so hard. It's so hard to read. And you know, we're sat up here in the top right-hand corner of the country, and we are a little bit out on a limb in terms of the programs that exist here. There aren't multiple programs. We're not sat in a conurbation like Manchester where there are multiple programs and kids going up against each other from multiple programs on a weekly basis at a very high level.
Yeah, or London, they'd have the same thing.
Or London particularly, of course, London. So it can be hard to see, and you've got that X factor that we were talking about a little bit earlier before, in that you just don't know what is going to mentally enter a young man or young lady's mind when they're reaching that critical point, 16, 17, 18. Are they playing to enjoy, or are they really committed to put everything else in their lives to one side to go on this journey to get better, to try and get to the next level? And it really is 9 out of 10 times it's that mental piece that's the difference. You know, is it true that somebody with less talent and a greater work ethic can go further than the talent with no work ethic? Well, it's not quite as simple as all that, is it? That's generalizing, but there is something in that. And if you've got both, you've got talent and work ethic, then you're really giving yourself a good opportunity, and physique, of course.
Yeah. Well, look, let's just talk about talent, Mark. You brought Fabio up. A BBL great.
Yes. No question at all.
Have you got his stats up there?
I know
we have got a piece of paper with his stats. Where is it?
I don't have the stats on here. Not this one. You've got stats
Oh,
on.
no. This is what happened. We have so many notes. We've got like 10 pages of notes.
I can tell you how many trophies he won at Newcastle.
Yeah.
And he won a bunch more. Well, he won 24 at Newcastle, but he won a bunch more. Obviously, he was at Sheffield. He was at Birmingham.
He still holds league records, I believe.
Yeah, he does. And you know, number of games coached, number of games played. but he was never going to win a scoring record because that wasn't what he was about. It wasn't that he couldn't score; he could score, but particularly in that period of him being a player coach, his whole, it took him. So when did he get he got the coaching role in 2002, I'm going to say, and we won our first trophy at the Brighton Centre against Nick Nurse's Brighton Bears.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in 2005.
How does that feel?
Winning that first one, that was amazing. That was amazing. Yeah, that was pretty unbelievable. Not least because, that was the season Nick had Dennis Rodman at the club. And,
yes, it was.
That was the year.
It was like, was it 4 games Dennis Rodman played? Was it or something like that?
That's right. Yeah. But they had a decent team anyway. They had a really decent team that season anyway. So, and this was us kind of breaking through that wall. We'd lost the league title the season before. God, I'm going to get this wrong. Chester Jets had won the league the season before in the last game of the season, beat us on our court to win the league. That was painful because we'd made that whole journey from Fab being coach, had a couple of indifferent seasons up to just being in the 1-2 spot. And then we just actually that might have been the same season even we lost the league. We won the trophy in 2005, and then 2 months later we won the playoffs against Cheshire. So we won the 2 trophies that season.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, the BBL trophy winners, BBL Cup winners, 2005. Yeah,
playoff winners 2005.
On playoff
Winners 2005, and then 2-5-6 was the next season. Andrew Sullivan was a year out of college. Tony Goblet had a really long chat with Andrew about you need to find a season to settle down somewhere. He'd come out of Villanova, had a great college career, and we managed to just about pull a package together, and Andrew listened to Tony and came to us for that season. That was the same season as the Commonwealth Games. I mean, that's the craziest season of all, really, because that was the first quadruple. That was the first clean sweep. And we did the clean sweep whilst losing Fab and Andrew Bridge and Andrew Sullivan to the Commonwealth Games in Australia for a month.
Wow.
I think we played 4 games that month and won them all without those 3 guys.
They must have been looking at the results come in going, we're good, we're all right.
Yeah, well, they were happy anyway because they won a bronze medal.
Blimey.
Crazy, honestly. I look back at that season. It was incredible season. So that was 2005-06, and then it rolled for quite a while. And then Leicester got ahead of steam, and there was a bit of a changing of the guard, I would say. I mean, I look back at it now. We won our last trophy in 2021.
Okay.
So we haven't been long out of it, but there's obviously been more changes of the guard since, and things have elevated very quickly in the league. It's extremely competitive now.
And that was the cup, wasn't it, that you won in 2021?
Playoffs, beat London Lions in the playoffs.
Oh.
And the cup.
And the cup, yes.
Yeah, look, you look at these. I mean, it reminds me of like, Formula One, where you just see Michael Schumacher win for 6 seasons, or was it 5? No, 6 seasons, then lose, then he's back.
Yeah.
Hamilton 5 seasons in a row. It reminds me of that. BBL Championship season winners 2005, 2006, 2007 and 8. 8, 9, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 14, 15. That is amazing. Playoff winners 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7, 8, 9. I mean, there's just continual success at the club since you've been in charge.
People must have really grown to dislike Newcastle winning all the time.
Yeah, probably. And it's not, I don't want to give any of them back, of course, but it's not. The whole context of conversation for a period was it's not healthy for the same team to keep winning all the time. It's not good for the league, and that's correct. It's not good in any sport for that to happen over a too long a period of time. But ultimately, coaches change, players retire. You have a cycle of recruitment, and if you're not like on top of that constantly, and keeping an eye on the competition around you, and equally there are things you can't control in that, or clearly that there might be somebody comes along that wants to invest at another level in a club, and that will happen for a period of time, might happen forever, might not. And we had our battles across those seasons. Guildford were extremely strong for a couple of seasons. Everton Tigers came along for a short period there. They were super strong. So there were always those periods. And I never forget Drew Sullivan winning the league with Everton on our court. See, a couple of seasons after leaving us. So those things, those things put chips on your shoulders and give you a motivation. Nothing personal with Drew at all. Very successful player, but you don't want people winning the league on your court.
No.
Not with the Eagle.
No,
not with the Eagle there.
Absolutely not.
No team does, whether it's us or Sheffield or Manchester or anyone. Nobody wants that to happen. That serves as a motivation. Fab was always really good at that, and he still is now, finding things to motivate the players. There might have been a press article that day that will get stuck up on the changing room wall.
Oh,
brilliant.
Old school, love it.
Yeah, something's being said about us. Just finding things, which is, why you should always be really keen not to give that opportunity to anyone else, because it works. There's no question of that. So yeah, I mean, just unbelievable career, and obviously, no doubt, we'll talk about Darius as well, who was here that whole journey. And has won 27 trophies. So
27 trophies. It's just like, how many have you won? I've won 2 or 3. I won 27. Okay.
And I think for me as well,
Box ticked.
Yeah, it's crazy. Having been through that whole period where, a bit like London are this season, they'll probably lose 4 or 5 games maximum in the season, and we had a lot of seasons like that. Where you just don't lose, really. One of those losses will be in the last 2 games of the season when you've already won the league. And to have gone through that for an elongated period of time, to come back into a situation now where we've been, particularly the last 2 seasons where we've been 9th and 8th, is tough. And that's really where I come back to what I was saying earlier about mentally. That's the hardest thing to deal with, and I didn't have to deal with that for such a long time, which I'm very thankful for, of course. But actually, you look at the league now and the level of competition in the league. There's no hiding place.
No.
Probably argue there were some hiding places over the years, for lots of different reasons, franchises that would come and go. But Plymouth. We just got over the line against Plymouth on Friday. Then they beat Leicester on Sunday, and they're, I think, they're bottom, aren't they? Yeah, they're bottom of the league. That is not, in the traditional sense of this league, a bottom of the league team. It just isn't.
Well, what's great about this season in particular for the. Oh, I was going to say neutral, maybe not neutral. We've got teams we like each and stuff like that, but. It feels like anyone can beat. Well, it feels like you've got a pyramid of one with London, and then everyone can beat everyone else.
Yeah, and we all want to try and find ways to beat London, knowing that ultimately their budget is just, and it's a topic of debate, isn't it? But their budget clearly is significantly higher than the rest of us. But I think this is the real key. Everybody in the league now, in all of the organisations, is at a level of experience that they know what kind of team they need to put on the floor to stay in and even win games, and and nobody gives up. I mean, there'll be the odd game, there'll be the odd blowout game, but teams don't roll over. You could argue that might have happened a little bit going back several years. That if you're taking a team out by end of the third quarter, the fourth might just see the game out, But that's not. You're always expecting a team to come back. At the moment, I certainly am, and I think that's slightly due to our experience the last couple of seasons. But so almost regardless of the budget, and Cheshire's the prime example of that this season. That's a hell of a team.
Yeah, like Aaron Rye, like get him from the NBL. He comes up, and it's like, I mean, his performance in the trophy, the final against London, it was like, wow. What a performance. I loved it.
I am super impressed with that young man.
Yeah.
He is, again, you come back to, high basketball IQ player. I mean, he's one of the highest IQ players. And this is just personal opinion. Maybe I don't know enough. Coaches might tell me something different. But he is one of the highest IQ basketball players in this league I've ever seen. Particularly as he's not really playing above the rim, but he can play above the rim. His Euro step is just off the charts, and his ability to stop, start, speed up, slow down. Even watching him again on yesterday against Caledonia, he doesn't miss much.
No,
he really doesn't. He makes smart passes. He can bring the ball up. I don't see him turn the ball over very much. You can tell I've been watching him closely.
Yeah, just a little bit.
But that takes nothing away from the rest of that team. They're just a very well put together team. Cheshire, all plaudits to them, recruit extremely well. Always have done. So you've got that, and that's why Cheshire can beat a London in a final.
Yeah.
And that was a great final. That was actually a great final.
Great fun to watch.
I was just looking up some of the stats from the final, actually.
But that I mean, just when you're talking about that with that sort of player, one of the marketing communications from the league that I saw out there somewhere, and someone had interviewed or put something out about how impressed they were with someone who'd stepped up from a lower league into the BBL and made it like that step. And it didn't, I won't say it didn't read so well, but it actually was, I'm not saying condescending, but you just looked at it and thought, he's got the highest stats on that team. So it's not a case of, oh, well done you. It's actually, oh, you're like leading the team here at the moment.
Forget it is.
And
forget
it is very
forget where
easy
you've come from. Forget where you've come from, because I mean, I'll be honest, I'm sure Mark won't mind me saying this. We looked at Aaron last season and the season before.
Really?
Yeah, because he was coming out of college, and Mark Elderkin, the coach at Newcastle Uni, we're a tight, program as in the Newcastle Uni D1 team. Mark had scouted him. Mark had talked to him about coming to play at Newcastle Uni and studying at Newcastle, because he's a super smart individual. We kind of had two bites at that, but other clubs will have as well in the league. Everyone was talking about him, but it was Cheshire that made it happen. So, fair play to them, full credit. And I hope, in terms of that, if I go back years and years, when the D1 was as I think it is again now, was a very strongly good audience basis across the clubs. This was just sort of back end of me playing. It then took a bit of a dip. Obviously, some of those clubs were coming up to BBL, like Plymouth, like Worcester. But I look at it now, and there's some super well run clubs in that division, and all doing seemingly doing a very good job. And they're in terms of participation, the closer that these two leagues can be together, the better, because that's what works in other sports in this country.
You might have a slightly different view than some of the other leaders of the teams, because you were in fact the BBL chairman for a tenure.
Yes. Yeah,
so when you did do that, how did that impact how you were viewing the club? Or did one, I want to say, was it a case of I'm looking behind the curtain, or I'm seeing other things at play? Did that change things?
What I would say is we all the clubs in BBL are very close. The owners are very close. We all have an equal view of what's happening behind the scenes. And that period that I was chair, I don't believe I really had any more of a view than I would have done if I wasn't the chair. Particularly at the time, the way the board was structured, every club had a seat on the board, and we would meet every 5-6 weeks. So communication was really strong, and we were. I've told this story many times before. We had a hiatus early 2000s with where we, for good or for bad, we'd left Sky to go to what it eventually was ITV Digital, and the financial contract that sat behind that was a no-brainer. We had to make that move, but unfortunately it all collapsed, and it collapsed because of the deal that ITV Digital had done with the Football League, and it was the Football League that took that whole project down, and us with it. And what happened in those years, those 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years after that was, unfortunately, the league and the clubs having to find their way back from that deal collapsing, and we lost clubs. The likes of London Towers disappeared. Manchester Giants disappeared just before that deal collapsed, and it was tough. And that was just about the same period that I took over as chair. So that whole period was trying to rebuild the top league. Whilst there were probably as few National League clubs as there'd been in that period, just an extremely difficult time. And thank goodness we're a long way out the other end of that. But it was a tough period, just trying to keep the whole thing alive. So we were all super close because of that. We were all just taking baby steps, trying to do the right thing, and that's where it really cemented for me that actually, the most important thing here is to build a club with a full-on pyramid system and some, not a house of cards, something that had some weight and some stability behind it, and that all the clubs needed to be that way. We weren't just a TV product. Yeah. The TV needed to be the cherry on the cake, not the thing that meant we would survive or fall, which unfortunately at the time was the case for 1 or 2 clubs. So I think we're much more in that position now than we have been. It's exciting times.
Is that why, I don't want to say there's reluctance, because I think everyone hopes about getting more teams in the league, but is that kind of the basis of bringing new franchise into the BBL? It's making sure it's got that financial structure, that stability that's going to, look, we want more teams in the BBL, but we want them around for 10, 20 years, not one season and they financially fold.
It's a tough balance. And we've obviously chosen to take an investor route to speed up that process. We clearly are looking for new franchises. They are out there. There are multiple discussions going on. But for me personally, what needs to come with that is a business model that works for all clubs. Now we're in a great position ourselves because we managed to, by hook or by crook, get ourselves a building built, have a strong foundation, and have all the pieces in place to build a reasonable turnover for a club at this level. Great fan base, just a lot of, hopefully, what continues to be a lot of stickability around what we're doing. That means that it'd be very, very difficult for it to disappear. And what underpins that more than anything else is the building. So, and I know that, I really know that now. I thought I knew it when we were in the process of trying to get the building over the line, and Leicester and Kevin with their journey, and now Sheffield, Yuri and Lisa excuse me, she'll kill me, Yuri and Sarah, with their journey. I'm going to say that again, Sarah and Yuri, with their journey, because we've all been through. All three parties have been through a very long history, and now we've all been through that building history. So, and obviously, Steve and what Glasgow have done, what Caledonia have done, Glasgow historically. Obviously, what the Bristol guys are trying to do with their build as well. This is all, for me, that's a sustainable building block, the building itself. Hopefully Surrey will have those plans. Manchester are in a building that is a good level for BBL right now anyway. It needs to be part and parcel of any future franchise's strategy, because it is the piece that will make it sustainable. So we know that. I suppose what I'm trying to say to you is we have that knowledge now. Didn't have that knowledge for a few decades prior to that. So we know what we're saying to new franchises coming in. But ultimately, and this is how professional sports work, any successful pro sports business model, look at the Premier League, the vast majority of the Premier League's income does not come from the club's local income streams. It comes from the Premier League itself distributing funds to those clubs via massive TV deals globally. Premium level exercising of their global rights. And in our own small way, we've got to try and find a way of replicating that.
Can I just talk about one thing, and literally what you were just talking about, which is the virtue. How do you say it? Virtue. The virtue. Mark's shaking his head as soon as I said it.
Virtue.
The Virtu Motors Arena,
That's right.
which arguably has got to be the greatest thing that you've been involved in bringing to Newcastle Eagles, because that is just such a great venue. And I've got quotes where you've been saying that this is now the foundation, like exactly what you're saying, foundation for what clubs should be. And when you see the venue, it's one of the nicest in the league.
When you watch it on telly, particularly, the atmosphere there always looks like it's absolutely good.
And I like the fact that the seating actually goes all the way around as well.
It's very, the four-sided seating is very important to me. I thought that was, we had to do that. I mean, as always with these things, if you have your time again, what would you have done slightly differently? And I've told loads of people that we're going to knock the back wall out, and that stand that's in camera view, the plan would be to double the size of that stand. And I think once we achieve that in that building on that footprint, that's probably about as far as we can take it. That would add 2 courts as well, so we've become a 5-court hall in one space.
Wow!
Look at what Leicester have done. Leicester have since building the original 3-court venue, they've got another 2-court hall right beside. You know, Kevin's done an amazing job to get that up in the period that he has. So we're all sort of chipping away, finding ways. I can tell you, everybody in the league works super hard. I've worked in 4 sports. There are some sports in this country you do not have to work hard in. Political statement, but it's true. I've been in that environment, and unfortunately, we are not one of those sports. We have to fight for absolutely everything. Absolutely everything. And
Where do you sit in your?
Where do I sit?
I was saying in your arena. Do you know what we call it on the show? Your arena. We call it the.
Where do I sit?
We call it the Eagles Nest. Where do you sit in the Eagles Nest?
I don't. I walk up and down on the back of the balcony on the camera side, about as far away from the referee's ears as you can get.
Do you know what I'm visualizing? There's a film called Moneyball. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah,
and Brad Pitt's like he's a bit like that. That's what I'm visualizing. You're Brad Pitt now.
He refuses to go to the games, doesn't he? He absolutely refuses to go.
Yeah, I just struggle to watch. So it's playing back to what I said earlier, and I just get very nervous with it, and I have immense respect for play. Although I probably felt differently when I was a player, but I have immense respect for players going out night after night in what is a win-lose game. You can't draw, and getting yourself up mentally across that period of time to want to go out and win. And I keep coming back to, especially in this league at the moment, because every game is a dogfight. Every game.
Yeah. That's
really
why the
is.
league's so good this year.
Yeah.
That's why it's so good. Because you look at the you look at the results and you go, wow, someone actually just managed to beat Leicester at home.
Oh yeah.
You think, wow, okay.
But those things around the building and everything that you've done there to get to that stage.
Yeah.
You got it all in the ground, everything was going, and then obviously we had lockdown. And as you said, you built that up. You built this whole. There's I want to say the cherry on top. You've got that foundation. You've got that wonderful building. Lockdown.
Actually,
and
yeah,
so
that came around that time. The building's ready to go. Bam, lockdown. Is that about right?
Year after, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's 13 months. So we opened January 2019, and as I've said before, we hadn't sold a can of Coke in our lives, just not done any of that. We didn't outsource any of it because we wanted to learn the hard way how to
the catering side of stuff, you mean?
Yeah, how to work out the secondary spend, creating a good service when there are going to be multiple queues in a venue where it's not as big as we would have liked to have been. So the space isn't necessarily there to make sure everybody's getting served in the way that you'd want them to be. Having never served anyone before, trying to do it ourselves rather than outsourcing it, which would have been a lot easier to do, but we would have learned nothing and we would have lost the margin. So, and obviously the big part of what a lot of supporters don't know is the business of the building is operated by the foundation, not the club. So the building is actually owned by the foundation. So all of the secondary spend that's generated in the building goes to the foundation, not the club. So I spent all this time on talks over the years saying, look, we've got to get control of all of our income streams and our secondary spend and so on. Well, actually, that part still goes to another organisation, but that other organisation is part and parcel of what we are. So now there's no problem with that at all, because the building has a mortgage, and the most important thing right now is that mortgage is paid, and the activity of the building is fully covered, and the foundation can help in so many other ways with the club anyway. It's building a market, ultimately, more and more young people playing that we softly persuade to come and watch a game every now and again. So it just all becomes a bit of a win-win, hopefully self-fulfilling prophecy that the pro teams, men's and women's, are the role models that bring the youngsters in that want to, you know, aspire to be, that form this bigger community, and it all becomes part of that economy that hopefully just keeps us sustainable. So yeah, so that's why I know the building is great. COVID, though, as you say, panicked us for a bit, because
I can imagine.
13 months in, we were the last team to play a game with Solent in the trophy final.
So Kestrels.
Yeah,
that's when they had their good run.
That was that good last game.
Yeah. So that was the last game of the season, was the trophy final at Glasgow. Half my team had decided that they needed to go home, so we went up to that final with 6 players. You know, you can argue the whys and the wherefores of that. Should that game have been played even?
Kestrels had a good team as well, because that's just down the road. They had a good team, and they had won the NBL Div 1 4 years in a row.
Yeah,
and they're one of those examples that you were talking about earlier, where everything's happening and they were like, we want to come in, but they couldn't get, because they don't have the capacity.
I think they got maybe 500 seater capacity. It's like a purist basketball court, but it's like
zero.
It's like Surrey goes up one side, but there's only about I'd say 500 tops.
Yeah.
Maybe 550 maybe, but
Bristol.
Yeah,
yes.
Bristol's about 700, isn't it? Whereas I think you're at 3,000 or something, are you?
Yeah, we're just short of 3,000. So, and again, I mean, we'd love to see a Solent team, or I would personally love to see a Solent team back in BBL. I mean, I played against Solent when in those early National League days. But I mean, the building blocks are the building blocks, aren't they? You know, if you haven't got the facility, then you've got to find a way to get a facility at some point to be able to play at this level. Otherwise, we haven't got the aspirational narrative around what the league is, in order to garner investment and try and move the thing forward, you know, to then become more competitive in Europe and keep moving up that ladder, you know. So just to very quickly answer that COVID question, we were a vaccination centre for 10 months.
Oh, right.
120,000 vaccinations through the building. We were extremely lucky to do the naming rights deal with Virtue Motors during that period. Robert Forrester came on board during that time, and it was just, I mean, they're an unbelievable story of a company anyway, but for him to do that at that point in time was an absolute lifesaver. And a few other things that had happened during that period got us through. All sorts of little projects were going on. Newcastle College, who are an anchor tenant of the facility, stayed open during the COVID period, so they still had lessons at our venue. And we would go in every morning, open the building, sit in reception. The management team, most of the staff were furloughed, and the management team we just went in and opened the building for a year, essentially. Very, very strange existence, but we got through it. Found a way. We always find a way.
I mean, it's been a very successful on the court, but clearly, obviously, you've had quite a lot of off-court success as well as an organisation. So, with sport changing as it is constantly, things like fan expectations and the technology and media and stuff, how do you, I don't want to say stay on top of that, but how do you embrace that and try and, you know, you've got 3,000 seats to fill and you want more, but you actually want people queuing to say, sorry, we can't get in tonight. What is the recipe that you've got for that?
Again, it comes back to building that market of people in the immediate region that have an understanding of our sport, and they're not coming into this completely blind. That said, you know, we're 20 odd years in, never really had less than 50,000 people come in a season in all of that time, of which, you know, a reasonably small percentage of the 50,000 are coming to every game, you know, the season ticket holders. So you would think, do the maths. There's at least 1 million people. So we should be pretty well known. But the fact is, we are way better known in our immediate area than we were when I took over. But we're still slightly behind the rugby, and obviously a million miles behind the football in terms of the usual challenges that our sport has. Press coverage, particularly national press coverage, which props any successful sport up in this country. Our regional TV, regional radio, regional press has always been good for a long time. We have to fight a little bit to make sure that we're not forgotten. But as long as we're communicating and we're putting calls in and saying, fancy coming down and doing something, it's always a yes. It's never a no.
Do you think the funding from things like Sport England and so forth are the best appropriated for?
Oh, it's terrible, isn't it? For like, where are we in the? Where's basketball
I think
in the?
It just ekes
rankings?
in the top 10 in Sport England for the money that they've put in this.
Do you have the list there?
I think it's actually on the computer that you're using there. But it's I think the number one was cycling. I think it was Sport England, and basketball makes the top 10. And
Number 2 is volleyball.
That's right.
Sorry, netball.
Netball.
But which is dominantly played by women.
It's incredibly so. This whole system, and I understand it implicitly because the period I was chair, I helped set up the all parties group for basketball, myself and an MP from Sunderland, and I was up and down to Portcullis House and the House of Commons. I'm going to say once every 2 months for 4 years.
Really?
And got a real good understanding, along with others. Kevin got quite heavily involved and still is with that. The governing body are all three governing bodies over a period of time. British body, and it's trying to change culture in terms of the decision makers and the power base of sport in government is extremely difficult. And a lot of it comes back to as you'd understand on a local level. Is a kid going to play basketball in school if the PE teacher doesn't teach basketball?
Yeah.
Right. Is a government department going to change the decision if the core of the MPs that are making the decisions never saw basketball because they never came close to a school that was even going to have a ball in their sports hall because of the schools they went to?
But then you could argue any kid you could give them a ball and they can bounce it anywhere, whereas you need a court to play badminton, and yet they get over 3 million extra in funding.
But if you want to change the power brokers' decision making as to where the funding should go to help enable that, it helps if they have experience of that sport themselves.
100%, yeah.
If they went to a school that probably didn't even play football.
Rugby, cycling, rowing, and cricket.
Yep, and athletics,
tennis.
Then you start to recognise actually this is quite a big wall we've got to break down here.
Yeah.
Could we do a better job of that as a sport collectively? Absolutely, we could. Do we have the resource, the time? Are we all too stretched? Yes, we are, and that's one of the biggest challenges, really. But we certainly, I wouldn't want to talk out of turn, but I do have very strong opinions in that area, and I have a lot of data from that period that would back my argument up. I think, unfortunately, for me personally, and I've said this consistently over a number of years, so I'm not saying anything different now, we have to do a better job of building our club infrastructure nationally. And I actually think it's a lot better right now than we're we're portraying it to be as well. We there's some fantastic large-scale community club projects going on in this country right now. I talk to the guys at Milton Keynes a lot. I talk to the guys at Liverpool a lot. I talk to the guys at Birmingham a lot. They're doing some incredible work. And the size of the clubs in the hundreds, where historically, it would only be rugby clubs that would have those levels of membership, and football clubs, of course,
Yes.
cricket clubs. So we're doing that kind of thing, and it's a scalable model. And at the point that we can turn around and say, look, we've got this many clubs, and the average size of these clubs is not 10, 12, 15, it's 400, 500, 200, and we do a really good job of presenting that to the right people, as clearly and simply as we possibly can. That's where you could start to really get change. But I'm not sure we certainly don't collectively tell that story as a sport. And that for me is the starting point. We've got to show that we're bigger than people think we are.
Yeah.
Do you think with the like cycling, for example, not something people necessarily associate with giant amounts of funding, but what they got the results, then they got the big backers like Ineos and Sky and all those sort of things, and because that money came in, then people said, hang on a minute, now you're winning medals or you're winning various things, and then the other money followed because they went, now you've made it, now you get do you think that's how the BBL is looking?
Yeah, but knowing a bit about how they went about that at the time, they also did a really good job in parallel of showing the powers that be how big at participation level this sport actually is.
Yep.
And they had Sport England's active people surveys showing those figures anyway. By the way, so did we, because our team sports figures were trending number 2, number 3 for years and years. Not to the same levels as cycling, swimming, athletics, because anyone that goes out and runs was in the athletics box.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a run tonight. I'm in the athletics box.
Yeah.
So
Someone's on a bike, cycling to work.
No, that's it.
They count.
Do you ever cycle?
Cycling, yeah. So
Yeah.
that is, broadly speaking, because it's all done on phone poll surveys. That's how the active people surveys have worked over all these years, under different names now. But and it is ultimately a bit about how you package it up, a bit about what the powers that be in politics and media want to do and don't want to do, and don't want to take risks on, or what is a perceived risk. For me, I don't see any risk. I see nearly 3,000 people coming to our venue.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And also, like as an example, on Sky Sports Arena, you had the BBL Trophy final, and it was in Birmingham, and there was some traveling fans, but generally the people from Birmingham went to watch that game. But it was great. The coverage was great. I absolutely loved it. Paul, you'll like this. I've actually sent an email to Sky Sports, complaining that they need to do more articles about basketball, because if you go on Sky Sports, you look at, say, football, you'll then have all the leagues, all the information. When you go, there is no basketball, it's just NBA, and it's really irritating because you think, Sky Sports are the pinnacle of sport in the UK, and for basketball, the focus is a league in America, which an article will get written once every 2-3 weeks. And you think, why don't you put basketball? You can put the NBA leagues in there, but BBL, NBL, put those in there. I even said at the end, I will write the articles for the BBL because we're talking about them. We're talking about them all. It wouldn't take that long.
No.
A couple of hours. There you go. There's your week's articles. I haven't had a response yet.
No. And that comes back to the what I was saying earlier about just because it's not there doesn't mean we're not trying super, super hard to get certain organisations to change the way they're working, but it's really hard to get them to change, particularly organisations that are truly commercial and are in an environment that's getting harder and harder every year. You see newspapers, the regional news have gone like this, TV, radio, and press. So that's telling you that staff bases in media are going like this.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anything. I mean, you're offering to do it for them. It should serve as a solution, but somebody still has to press the button.
Yeah. Upload it.
Make sure it's acceptable, etc., etc. So it's not the easiest. I'm not giving them an excuse, but it's not the easiest thing to do.
No, I get it. I get it.
Now, there is an organisation that isn't commercial and doesn't do it, and I cannot accept that.
Yeah, it's.
Have you been on BBC Sports basketball page recently?
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah, don't.
I didn't even go on that one. Literally, I always go BBL.
But it comes back to what you said about the. I mean, there's been things about Channel 4 recently, how they may wind up, or people don't know, they might privatise because of all these shrinkages and everything going on because of their audiences. But I think what's really interesting is that what you mentioned earlier about the TV rights and the winding in of money. The old money with the football was always in that. When you look at the NBA, where's the money? It's in the TV rights and the licensing.
That's right.
But with the NBA, it's unusual because Sky have the rights for the UK, but the NBA will still send me a message saying, do you want to buy a league pass? Well, hang on a minute. That means you're getting double bubble because you're paying Sky rights for something and I don't have Sky, so I'm paying in that way, but they're still getting probably a per head token for me.
Yeah, it's a very complex, clever market,
but it is a house of cards because at some point you go, how many people actually turned on the NBA for Sky? And at some point they'll say, well, we'll pull our money out, which is why the NBA put so much money into league passes and so forth.
The league pass is the ultimate management of your own destination because it's their picture, and they're selling that picture, via global internet. So they've got full control of that process, and the money goes directly back to the league. So it's the best. Ultimately, if you can do that, plus then syndicate your picture to channels across the world, then that's the right way to be selling your pro sport. And in fairness to Aaron, that's exactly what he's trying to do. He's the work that he's done in syndicating across the channels that we're on in the States now is incredible.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a nice segue into your new. I say the new partners, but where's 777 coming in? They've been in a few years now.
Well, a lot of our listeners are from the States.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, we got loads from us. We got all over Japan, all sorts of places, but
all over the world. But there's loads from America.
Loads from the States.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode. That is the end of this part. But do not worry, because coming soon is the second part of this episode, and it will be available soon.